please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Welcome back. Well, counting down to pre-open, the SGX Nifty is seeing sharp recovery, almost about to break into the green. In fact, if you take a look at the Asian screen, that's also where you're seeing some bit of recovery. So perhaps things could be different when we start to trade. That's Hang Seng actually has moved into the green from being down about 100 points. But of course, has been volatile all over the place. Prakash Diwan is still with us. Prakash, Axis Bank. Now, yesterday, of course, we had that big gap up. But towards the end, it had almost moved to the low point of the day. That was, of course, a day trade. But from here on, what's the call now on the stock?
No, I'm quite positive. In fact, overall, while you look at financials and banking to be one of those obvious stressed areas because of the imminent interest rate hike that you have started factoring in, Axis has to itself, it has a certain advantages, favorable outcomes that are in the offing. Now that you have a very distinct change in leadership that's visible enough, there's no uncertainty. I think the next stage is going to be for them to start focusing on areas of, the growth engine. So whether it's, the alliance with Max Life, or whether it's, getting into some of the new trade, funding products that they usually used to have very well, but it stopped in between. And if you realize in the last 6 months, I haven't come across any new lending where, corporate lending where Axis has actually been the consortium leader or anything like that. That aggression, Axis has actually been the consortium leader or anything like that. That aggression on lending has been not there. And you saw that in the credit growth rates slipping down much faster than the other banks. So it has to play catch up, and they do have cleaned up kind of a balance sheet, and every time there's a new leader who comes and new management control person who's driving the management will always want to kind of start off on a clean slate. So expect one more quarter of corrective action in terms of the NPLs, but then beyond that you'll probably, beyond all that kitchen sinking, you have a very fresh start and a clean slate.
The thing is behind. Now, it's only the aging of the NPA.
Exactly. The aging could be the only wait period for you. But I think it's sitting at a very ripe, this thing. And there could be some acquisitions announced, M&A activity around it,
Acquisitions? I mean, I don't know if there's that much capital, but anyway.
Yeah, Rupee has started slightly strong. So that's obviously important cue, because yesterday we ended almost at the low point. So we would want to see some
72.31 is a very good start.
Yeah. Let's see if it can continue there, but for now, the start is good.
And the pre-opening rates are also kicking in. It's the IT stocks that are on top of the list. So you have Wipro, TCS, Tech Mahindra, all higher by about 1%. Axis Bank is also moving up after the strength it saw yesterday. Axis Bank is seeing another 1% up move. And you have a couple of more stocks. Some of these auto names like Hero MotoCorp, M&M, etc. are also trading in the green right now. Do keep an eye out on names like Ujjivan. We spoke about that earlier, where Macquarie has put out a note. They've said that the stock has corrected 15% in the last 3 months, and that's an attractive entry point. So keep an eye out on some of these names. In the green for now.
Well, that's about all we can say. Yeah. Let's check out if it can remain that way. I would worry about bond yields as well. I don't think we factored it in entirely yesterday at 8.15, but today they could be a little better. No, the first rate is a little in the red. Benchmark bond yield is at 8.17, versus 8.16 yesterday. That's a spot of bother, but it might start listening to the rupee cues and maybe correcting itself. The first cue is not very positive in the bond market, and mind you, these are all traded yields. This, unlike the equity markets from 9 to 9.15, is not just a bid. So let's wait and see. Not too confident. Prakash, what will you pick from the NBFC pack? They are the ones that will be hurt by this higher cost of money immediately.
Yeah, so right now nothing. It's more of let it kind of settle down. The cost impact is going to be quite a bit for, and look at how the texture of the market on the NBFC pack has got disturbed. Look at the way Bajaj Finance has lost ground. I mean, you don't see that happening. Every downward take, you had buyers waiting, wanting to buy. This time around, everybody is kind of wanting it to, kind of consolidate, settle where it would. But my sense is, given the uptick in the commercial vehicle side, some of the, new growth engines which are from the SME side, you would probably look at some of those SME-focused companies like Chola Finance, or to some extent a Magma FinCorp. You know, these are very segment-focused companies, and you could look at. And then going back to that question on Axis, my whole this thing is, who is going to grow? It's banks that have cleaned up, have got their act together, and they've not over-borrowed where there's no liability, asset liability mismatches that they're staring at. So that's the kind of, you know, pockets that you would look at. I stay away from HFCs for sure. Don't like any of those right now.
Okay,
So
well, just a minute. There's a report from Credit Suisse on the IL&FS, you know, accident, if you please. And the note says risk of ALM mismatches manifest. IL&FS, the parent company of IL&FS Group, will, with consolidated debt of 91,000 crores, has seen its credit rating fall. Its travails highlight the risk of wholesale funded model, particularly if asset liability mismatches grow. And the share of short-term funding has jumped to 36% in FY17 compared to the previous year's 23%. See, FY17, it was mouth-watering to renew your debt because demonetization had put so much money in the banks, and I guess that's the price they are paying for. 70% of the assets were long-term, but 36% of the financing was from short-term sources, and that's the price they're paying now, so steady decline. And that's a seminal lesson. Now, I guess NBFC investors will have to start looking at ALM mismatches in all the companies that they own. That's the next big story.
Oh, absolutely. We'll keep an eye out on that. But a couple of more stocks. Shrey Infra is up about 5% on the news about the approval for the Shrey Equipment IPO. And Reliance Home Finance is up almost about 7.5%. It came out with its numbers. The AUM growth was more than 20%. The profit growth was more than about 55%. So those are a couple of stocks in the news. Prakash, I wanted your thoughts on how to approach these insurance companies, ICICI Lombard, Pru, SBI Life. Yeah. You know, our colleague Yash was talking about how the rules for insurance companies will be reviewed and the minimum public shareholding period may be increased from the 3 years that it is currently. Any of these pockets, any of these stocks interest you?
You know, this is a very interesting space, Zunia, and I would believe either to relatively under-discovered. So that's why, you know, the pricing of most of these stocks is kind of, you know, still in that kind of zone where you would need give it more time to stabilize. And I would buy, and this is what we've recommended to clients, would go out and buy a basket of companies. Don't rely on one horse, and then that's going to win all this, you know.
Like which ones?
So you buy the top. So if you look at the business models, the distribution, differentiate on the distribution side and a little bit on the product depth. I would buy a basket of SBI Life, IPRU, and HDFC from the life side. And not that there's too much of a choice on the non-life side, but you definitely go out and buy a GIC and a Lombard. You know, so you have your hands in a public sector business and a privately driven business. So this is where you would have to buy a basket and wait for 5, 6 years, 7 years to grow. It's not going to be something which will very quickly catch up on price volume action.
Okay, in terms of public shareholding, of course, ICICI Lombard is not the one that benefits, but the others do, SBI Life and HDFC. That's the list of public shareholding. If this rule out, let's be very clear, it's a recommendation, a request from IRDA to SEBI. It's only at that level, but the obvious beneficiaries are SBI Life, SBI, HDFC Standard and New India Assurance, if the overhang is postponed to not just 3 years, but a bit more. Well, let's do one thing. Since we still have a few more minutes for the actual trading to start, about 8 minutes, let's invite Manisha Gupta to tell us what's happening in the world of commodities and currencies. Good morning, Manisha.
Morning, Lata. Thank you so much for that. Well, we have seen some strength return back in case of the crude oil prices, 0.25% up for both the varieties. The Iran sanctions, well, you have seen more statements come in from that, from US saying that even as they give waivers to some of those countries like India, it would be for a restricted or a specified quantum there. So that is something that the markets would keep an eye on. In any case, we have seen a decline in imports from Iran for countries like India, South Korea, Japan, etc. Apart from that, if you look at the latest numbers that have come in sense of the shale output from US, that also seems to be plateauing since the month of May. We haven't seen any further high on highs. Also, there are supply concerns from Venezuela and Libya, which just about continue. And the markets also believe that even as the US and China are at war with their trade tariffs, etc., the demand for crude in that sense will not be impacted, especially in Asia. Even as we have seen all-time high petrol and diesel prices, there is no sense on demand coming down in India or the other many countries as well. And that would continue to keep the crude oil prices on the higher side. The US and China trade concerns definitely have made an impact on the metal prices, where we have started Asia almost, red in all the metals there, whether it's precious, ferrous or non-ferrous. We have started marginally in the red for all of that sector.
Okay, Manisha, thanks a lot for that. Well, that rupee strength is being sold into already, so that's of course going to be a bit of a problem because of crude strength and other issues, and of course the fact that it's inherently weak. Reliance Home Finance is a stock which is looking quite okay today, 6% higher. Shrey Infra is going to start 4.5% higher. Let's see where it settles. But the pre-opening has settled 40 points higher on the Nifty at 11,476 and about 100 higher on the Nifty Bank at about 27,295. Ashwani, if we open here, what would be the first trade?
I think the market will tell me, because that is the zone I'm looking at. But you have to see if a sell-off starts from there. My sense is it would. So let's see if post opening we see selling come back, because if that happens, that means the downtrend has resurfaced, and if it doesn't, if it starts to cross these levels post opening, then it would mean that maybe we are still sideways. So wherever we are opening, if there is no follow through out there, then it becomes a short trade.
And your 9-10 call?
See, Bharat Forge has yesterday reversed from the 200-day moving average on the downside. So that's a sell with a stop of 672, target of 650.
Okay. Well, the rupee is now dilly-dallying between 72.39 and 72.40. But the early morning sugar rush is not held. In any case, it is still not worse than where it ended yesterday, but these are just first 5 minutes of trading. We'll have to really wait and see. The pre-market trading placing of bids is over, and at the moment there still is a spot of green on the markets. So Darshan, anything fresh that is looking like worthy of a trade?
Actually, yes, but both on the buy side only.
Oh,
ICICI Bank should outperform, and so should Tech Mahindra. Tech Mahindra, Sonia talked about, but I'm adding ICICI Bank. Both stocks I'm looking at.
Okay, how about SBI? And maybe I could toss this to Mitesh. There is one fundamental positive news coming for them. While they were expecting some 37,000 crores from New Metal for their SR Steel loan, now Arcelor is promising them 42,000 crore plus some money for other loans of Uttam Galwa and stuff like that. So that's a good pot of money. There's fundamental positive news. Mitesh, what are the charts saying?
Yeah, Salota, I think, charts have been slightly weak. The stock is broken down from this 295-315 range. So I think we might get an immediate bounce back to about levels of 295. But if we fail to sustain above that, then I think the stock will again taper up from there.
Okay. Prakash, we were reading out a report from IDFC Securities earlier in the morning where they said that the correction that we've seen in FMCG stocks is now a great buying opportunity. I mean, HUL is still your biggest loser this month. It's down almost about 10%. You think it's a good time to buy?
No, not yet. The reason is, we are getting excited about two things there. One is the YOY growth, which, we should always temper down, given the fact that last year GST was a dampener of sorts for these companies. And whatever destocking that you see is already come into the numbers. They're overvalued, given the fact that the expectation of growth is tremendous. So any letdown in volume growth, so last quarter was good for HUL and some of the biggies, but can that be sustained for the next 4 quarters? Because you've already penciled in 2020 earnings into this, and those earnings are expected to be at the same pace, which is where my doubt is. And a lot of input costs would also start coming in terms of inching up, given the higher MSPs. The MSP always has a 6-month lag, so it's just like Bharat Forge. Bharat Forge has seen, already talking about a 20% dip in margins, which is significant given the high input costs. So, and that comes with a 6-month lag. So same is with the FMCG guys, the guys who buy wheat and sugar and everything. It's not going to be so easy to keep on maintaining these margins.
Okay, yes, there could be that problem. But at the moment, the markets have probably taken profit where they can. I mean, that was an example which external and EM expert was telling us yesterday. The reason why rupee is suffering is the same reason why Hindustan Unilever is suffering. It's a deep market, it has value, so sell it for the same reason that you would take profit in a Bajaj Finserv or a Bajaj Finance. That was the analogy he gave. But at the moment, 70-40 and still holding, at least not trying to plumb fresh depths. But let's wait and see. Ashwini, is again, I'm asking you the Ghisa-Pita question on NBFCs. There is a fresh report from Credit Suisse indicating that mismatches, asset liability mismatches stocks will be particularly vulnerable, and we saw the IL&FS group losing 10% apiece yesterday. Any more, which would be the prime casualties?
See, wherever profits are left, so L&T Finance, all kinds of housing finance companies, everything financial is getting the bad news in terms of ammunition. People are long up to their necks in NBFC. So definitely all of them should be under pressure.
Prakash Diwan, Bajaj Auto has also gained quite a bit this month. It has exports, so it benefits from the rupee depreciation as well. Do you think it's a big positive?
It is, and of course, given the tailwinds of the EV launch, the three-wheeler acceptance and stuff like that. But I think all the good news for the moment has been priced in, and especially two-wheelers, we've seen a little bit of exuberance. So what happened to Maruti could also happen to some of these guys, in terms of losing ground very quickly without no real negatives of sorts. Maruti is today at 8,600. I mean, for no great reason that it's lost that $600 in no time. So you will have to be slightly selective from the auto OEMs now, Sonia. It's not a great pocket at the moment. And I've been saying Maruti would be under stress. The Hero MotoCorps of the world would be under stress. Bajaj has had some news flow and that's keeping it pepped up. But except for M&M, I don't see any of the OEMs being worth buying into at this current level.
Okay. You can get them cheaper maybe, and that's the mood of the market now. But a few seconds to opening, so let's just wait and then come with our questions.